What's up, everybody? Today we're going to be doing a ASMR slash NuclearRevenge storytelling. Alright. Posted by posted by u slash w0rd underscore nerd 3 months ago. Steal my meds, enjoy divorce, jail, joblessness, and sleeping in your car. Let's get started. 16 years ago, I made a friend one day on the bus. Up until about a year ago, I considered this guy as a member of my family. Let's call this guy a Joel. So I keep a crystal bowl on the mantle above my fireplace full of my medical marijuana. I started noticing that after poker night, my bowl seemed a lot emptier than it should. So I set up a camera to see which one of my guests was helping themselves when my back was turned. Next poker night, once everyone is gone, I pull up the video. There Joel was, plain as day, stuffing like $60 worth of my medication into his pocket. I sent him the video and told him he had to return my medication or pay for it. And I told him that if he chose to do neither, he should no longer consider me as a friend. He denied it. Even with the video staring him in the face, he said he hadn't taken anything. He even had the nerve to act offended by the fact I accused him. So I decided to ruin his life. Over the years, he had told me a lot of things he didn't want his wife to know. Affairs, shady shit he did, with the joint funds, drug issues, terrible things he had said about her mother and her sister. I went back through all of our messages and took screenshots of everything secret he had ever said to me. There were over 70 pics. I sent him the screenshots. Here are some examples of the kind of stuff that was in the screenshots. He admitted to cheating on her wife with 8 different women over the course of our friendship, taking money that was saving for a car and using it to buy drugs, specifically Xanax and perks. The fact he was continuing to do drugs after he promised he was clean and sober. Some of the things he had said about her and her family. She's a vile, disgusting woman, and the reason they never have sex is that they can't smell in between her folds. He also said it was pretty sure it was molesting. She was molesting her niece. He said it was all her friends, and they pretended like her so they could buy oxys off her. Also, as I'm editing this, I just remembered that he said he wanted to get one of his side chicks pregnant because he'd always resented his wife for being infertile. Her sister is an insane harpy. Her sister abuses her kids. This is not true, but he said it. Her sister is faking her autoimmune disease for attention. Her mum is a fat, lazy cow who doesn't actually need to be in a wheelchair. She just likes not having to stand up or bathe herself. So she's malengiering. I think I just butchered that word. There were more things, but that's what came to mind without me having to dig through the screenshots I sent. She filed for divorce and reported him to the police for the drugs he had in their house, while he was doing his 8 months in jail for the pot that he stole from me. His boss filled his position and he lost his job. His now ex-wife won't let him in her house. Now he lives in a car and showers at truck stops. I found out about the aftermath in part. Some came from his ex-wife. She told me about the divorce, kicking him out, getting him arrested. Same came from a guy, Joel, and I used to be both friends with, who works at the place Joel used to work. He told me about the job lost, car living, and the truck stop thing. I'm still on good terms with his ex-wife. I even sent him some enchiladas the other day for Cinco de Mayo. I can't pronounce that. I also sent the video to all of our mutual friends, so he lost 90% of his social circle. I got the other 10% out of my own life, since they want to associate with them known thieves, birds of a feather. Alright, next story. Want to promote friends. Oh, sorry. Hold on, let me start. Posted by u/adorable_joke6324 4 months ago. Want to promote friends/family instead of knowledgeable current employees. Okay, then I'll shut the facility down. Thought about this one for a while before posting it, trying to decide if I wanted to, and if so, where it should go. Finally, after looking how it all specialist. Bear with me, this one does take a bit to explain what steps came. When I was a floor officer, I worked with others assigned to the same unit to get a general code of conduct going, i.e. what we would expect out of the officers, and we'd let them slide within reason. Because of this unit we worked on ran so well that the most thought of the unit as the easiest unit in the facility to work, but it was because all of us ran it nearly identical and were consistent and fair. I had to find the next line. Ow! Eventually this caused my shift commander to move me to other areas as a test and eventually as a visitation. Visitation ended up being one of the most demanding positions I've worked at the facility, simply because prior officers had done so little and were so behind. Along with my partner, which regularly changed because of the stress of the position, we got the visitation department up to code and went from taking 5 visitors a weekend to over 80 visitors a weekend on the regular. After doing this for roughly 3 years, I moved up to sergeant of visitation, which was less stressful and was more supervisory and handling complaints as well as necessary policy revisions. After nearly 2 years, I moved into shift commander. Here I identified several issues with our overtime policy to include significant favoritism issues as well as corrected civiling reporting flaws that were constantly being dinged on by the PPMU, Private Prison Monitoring Unit of the Department of Corrections in my state. Holy crap, that's a mouthful! PPMU, Private Prison Monitor, bloody hell, that's a mouthful. Because of this, the PPMU personnel and I became very close as I worked with them on further clarifying and correcting some of the things that we weren't doing quite right. This led to creating several spreadsheets in Excel that more or less made tracking overtime, vacation, assignments, and various other little managerial things for easier to track with barely anyone having to do much other than add their employees and fill out assignments for each shift. This allowed us to get away from favoritism and more easily spread copious amounts of overtime fairly, so everyone was doing their fair share instead of just a handful constantly being taken advantage of, also making it easy to explain monthly shortages. Higher-ups loved it, PPMU loved it, and many of the overworked frontline staff were delighted by it, because it allowed them to finally get some rest after 16-hour shifts where others hated it because they couldn't skate by under the radar without doing their share of mandatory overtime. Part of the new hire agreement was signing you understood there was mandatory overtime and refusal could lead to disciplinary up to termination. During this time, we had some changes in administrative and the creation of a couple of positions that were required as part of a contract with the state, which was renegotiated yearly. This is important to note later on, okay? I just added the okay part. This included at least one captain per shift. I said ship, goddammit. Originally we had 2 lieutenants, a captain of housing, had none prior, a security specialist, also a lieutenant position, and changing several positions from officer to sergeant level. This is where the problem started, and a number of staff started filing complaints because while the state mandated these positions, the private company didn't like it cut into their profit margin, but However, administration saw this as a way to get their friends in cushy positions. Company policy says to promote from within, but our administration found ways to make it seem like most internal candidates didn't meet qualifications while hiring old buddies into newly created captain and administrative permissions. I was eventually moved to security specialist and back up to shift commander. My new role was creating facility-specific amendments to administrative regulations to ensure we were following the purpose of administrative regulations. This entailed how our equipment was managed, key submissions, restrictive housing unit visitation, perimeter security, and making sure all guests /visitors /vendors /volunteers entry policies were followed to include the mandatory background checks. also ended up taking over several other Excel spreadsheets that were required to show each department in the facility was recording these after the required hours per our state contract agreement. It's quite the handful to say the least. By closely following the administrative regulations, I was quickly making more enemies. There's a lot of issues started showing how incompetent the administration was. Namely, the major housing captain and one of the other captains that were buddies the major got hired on. As security specialist, I reported directly to the major, deputy warden as well by extension PPMU. We had regular meetings to discuss issues and how to remedy them, and then it was my job to alter the adjustments so the major could review and sign them along with the warden before they went into effect. By this time, I was a sole manager of no less than 5 major Excel spreadsheets in the facility used in various departments, all of which I trained each in those departments to include major and captains, as it was eventually to become their responsibility to manage them. This included giving them encrypted passwords if those spreadsheets ever broke, such corrupted as Excel is known to do on occasions. However, this didn't happen, and I was constantly to go in order to get them fixed. After a couple of years of this, in comes the private court to renegotiate the contract. Suddenly my position and responsibilities get reorganized into the respective captain or major responsibilities. At this time, a new captain position comes open, and I put in for it along with several others with similar experience to me, and one that has absolutely bare minimum experience but is close friends with the major and another administrator sitting on the hiring board. Needless to say, they get the position and they get bumped to their old position as housing lieutenant. I asked my major why I can't be moved back to shift commander where I can at least still work on all the policies and sheets I've made up to this point, to which my major says to me, "You want a captain, and we need a captain there. Not you. Just be happy you didn't get demoted and stop trying to be a captain." I smile and reply, "Okay, but do you know, if you move me to housing, I no longer have responsibility over all the work I currently do, as that is all security-related responsibilities, and housing has different responsibilities, right? It is important to note that this species of housing and security acted like 2 different entities from one another, and security had final say over the housing, but it was housing's responsibility to address housing issues before coming to security. This meant moving me to housing lieutenant instead of back to shift commander would mean I no longer had any right to correct them when they weren't following the policies I'd written prior, and certainly meant I had no responsibility over any of the spreadsheets they managed. "Well, that's how it works here," the major replied. "You just didn't get the position. I'm sure you chose the best person and there'll be no issues. Just do what your new position is, because you aren't a captain or a housing lieutenant. You will only do what is part of the position's assignment." At this point, it gives me the biggest shit-eating grin, as he's waited 3 years to put me in my place for making his job harder by actually having to do his job. "Okay," I say, and leave the room without saying any further. Now, I'm going to cut it here because my camera's running low. Once it's charged, I'll see you again.